It's Thursday, December 15th, 2022. I'm in this. I'm listening very carefully to, it's again, this story television. This particular piece was mentioning the presidents, like the past presidents. So from 1913 to 1945, S1E6, Thursday, 12:15. Again, words I've heard spoken about, like lodge a complaint. I would love to, if the escalator company could send me a lodge representative. I thought that was like a Canadian reference. At like Disney Princess Wilderness Lodge and having the entire problem with whatever's going on here. So that was interesting as far as family noses go. And really not knowing much else as narrative. And so I'm watching that. It also said that Wilson pushed for this League of Nations, which I'm like, now is that at a peaceful gathering of the family that tends to like to marry their cousins or whatever? Is that part of what this League of Nations is? Because in 2022 terms, there's something that opened in New York's area called United Nations, which does not look League of Nations, but they're using this word nations, which could, at the family law firm, get really tricky. Which I get, again, I don't want any of them to have any problems with the family members that are very respectful even still. Even though we're not on a first name basis. All right, so I'm watching this, and it's The Presidents. It says season 1, episode 6, which is when they mention this Woodrow Wilson. Also, he had Black Jack as a general, which I also did not know the reference, who said that the president and the Americans were to maintain a separate army, a separate American army, which seems to be like a real key, crucial, family important whatever at maintaining Department of Homeland Security. Since I don't know where this now, then I heard some of the local whatevers saying that nowadays it's a volunteer army, whatever that means. And like, whose kids are running the law firm? Do we still have our own separate army? Because I can't, heads or tails. I mean, there's not a League of Nations, there's something called a United Nations, and it does not look like family law firm regulated, or I don't know, like based on the black and white films before Technicolor came into the picture. So I'm going back onto that separate thing. This is what they're stating. And again, I don't have access to just call up the descendant of Thomas Jefferson and ask, since he's a principal. And I wasn't really sure what that meant. So this gets confusing, is the filter that they're putting some of the stuff through and some of this real stuff I got going on here, with different chemicals in the air based on the amount of combustible engines and the automobiles and the breaking apart or the allowance of this credit market for automobile purposes, which then grew exponential problems, which I don't know how that ties into the business and the leisure office. And then I'm noticing, I flash forward, they mentioned something about Nixon, and I'm like, I don't even want to go into Nixon.
It was really one of the great speeches in American history.
From the beginning of America's involvement in the war, Wilson was focused on his vision for the peace. And central to that vision was his idea for the League of Nations, an international body that could settle disputes without bloodshed and bring an end to war. The League would become his great obsession. As a war president, Wilson mostly kept his hands off and let U.S. Army General John "BLACKJACK" Pershing take care of the details.
I have to say, as far as costume, this is still one of my favorite looks on a jacket. I wear it often. Of course, being a female, I like mine with a belt, cinched waist, but I mean, still so stately.
John J. Pershing said that Woodrow Wilson gave him only one order: maintain a separate American army. Wilson had brought the United States into the war late and for our own reasons. And one of the ways to make sure that we emphasized how separate our commitment to the war was to keep a separate army.
Now, it's so interesting because the ancestors said separate for a reason. I am really confused with what's going on in the real world at the end of the 19th century. Since the beginning of the 19th century, they were really clear: separate army. The law firm and the White House had family reps who were in agreement, and there was some foreign League of Nations to keep bloodshed to a minimum. Uber important facts. I don't know extenuating circumstances past what their allowance on the television is. But what's going on by late 19th century into early 2000s is a problem. I heard something on here about Germany was blowing up American ships. Yeah, okay. So that's a problem because nowadays the ships come in. I just saw one and documented one from China. And I'm like, well, that's a turnover. What happened to the separate army and the White House? I mean, and the family law firm. I'm just curious. So I'm listening to these narratives. I'm curious. Since I'm just whatever and whatever. I know that this information exists. Then there's the whole university and college system. And there was at some point, they taught enough in New York I earned paper at Regency for a U.S. history Regency exam, which was just memorizing facts to have the paper on the ground. So they knew that I learned some of the family portraits and whatever, but it wasn't taught in an integrative fashion of like, these are your predecessors and these are really important lifelong facts that you should stick on to. None of that was really pronounced. Same thing with Western civilization, a confusing mishmash of intelligence in a textbook that really had no placement other than making for some key vocabulary words as reference points. Um, trying to think of what else. So there was something called a regency or regents that the state of New York pushed us through in one cohesive whatever. I think I passed it. Um, but the carry forward, it's like as if it feels like I in this version of 20th century that I didn't even go through it. Like I couldn't remember a question off of it. I don't know what it was addressing. I don't know any of the material that was used. Same thing with my French exam. I've passed my French Regency also. I couldn't hold a conversation, that's for sure. Not facts I'm proud of. Just there's no practical use of it in the series of rooms with all these doors shut. It's so frustrating. Um, it's like pearls of wisdom that you work so hard to try to acquire, and then they're just ripped from your person after you served some purpose, and then nobody even checks to see that you're um, still integrated and okay. It's star 1978, star 8378, Nicole, Cattaruzza, it's Earth, solar system, Milky Way, universe, galaxy is broken, and it's Bayside Station, Bayside, New York, 11361.